There we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Class with Young Screenwriters. We are a resource for up-and-coming screenwriters, and today we're going to talk about the great movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's Screenplay, and just the movie in general and why it's awesome, and our general thoughts as well. Alexie will be joining us soon, but I'm here with our guest, Avishai, who is an extremely talented screenwriter in his own right, and myself.
Thank you, Adam.
Another screenwriter. We're all screenwriters. That's why we're talking about screenwriting.
Two of the three big glasses to A's.
Yes. Oh, yeah. We're not the Trinity yet. Would you say that you're, if of the Trinity, which one would you be?
Definitely Morpheus.
Okay.
No, Morpheus is John. I don't think I'm in the Trinity, man.
You're not in the Trinity. You're definitely not in the Trinity. All right. Okay. Let's talk about the movie for a second. So I'll just say my experience with it. I've seen it twice now in theaters. I loved it. The first time I watched it, I came in with no expectations, and that I think is the best way to watch this type of movie. But and also spoilers for everybody because I'm about to start. If you have not seen the movie, please go see it.
It's a difficult movie to spoil, I feel.
I feel like there's parts of it that are joyfully surprising. Although I think you're right. I think like no matter what, even if somebody knows the whole plot and the whole story ahead of time, they'll still enjoy it. So it's not like a movie that you can ruin via spoilers. But I think it's enhanced with the surprise. But I'll just say I loved it. And the first time I watched it, I was blown away by. I was on the ride. I was on the train, and I was stopping at every stop they wanted me to. The second time, I think I understood the movie more because it's a bombardment.
Yeah,
the senses. So I have a few like things I could nitpick about in terms of like it's a very intense movie, but it's like one of the most fun movies I've watched in a long time, and I think it really leans into its strength. So like Evelyn is such a great character, and I want to ask you a question. What do you think? Sorry, what was your experience with the movie? I don't want to start talking. There's so much to say about it.
Yeah, I mean it's a nice little indie about an immigrant family who are sort of varying degrees of emotionally estranged from each other while all kind of being under the same roof and trying to connect with each other while not being able to relate to each other, and it's about them trying to do their taxes.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely brilliant that the majority of the movie, all of Act 2, takes place in the IRS. So for like a multiverse film about like being able to go anywhere across space and time, they're in the IRS.
It's actually really kind of a smart trick that they pull because this movie was not made for Marvel money, right?
Right.
They had 5 visual effects artists who did all the visual effects shots, and I think most of them, I might be wrong with this, I don't think they were trained. I think they kind of learned how to do visual effects from just watching YouTube tutorials. And it has this great scope to it. Hello.
Welcome.
To it while being entirely contained almost. It has very surprisingly few locations. So it's a stealth indie. It's an indie that feels like a blockbuster, but it is kind of a small movie. Hi, Alexie.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. This is not my new permanent spot, but it's going to have to do for today. We moved, so
you've got backlight, and that's a matter. Yeah, backlight.
I need the little halo around my head. Exactly. What
so, Alexie, we were just talking about our impressions of the movie. Like, what was your experience watching it?
I definitely went in with a bias because Adam sold it so hard. So
I'm the worst, by the way.
I was prepared to hate it. I was prepared to say, Adam, you're wrong. No, but I was actually very excited, and I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. I didn't really know anything about it going in. I knew loosely what Adam told me but you weren't that specific. You just kept saying, this is up your alley. I cried. You're going to love it. Was the gist.
I'm weak. I cry all the time in movies. I'm just
I think everybody else cried. I just don't cry ever. But yeah, it was, I really, really liked it. I thought that it was really well done. I feel like the acting was amazing. I think that the actor who played the daughter is
oh yeah, she's
do a lot of
gonna
really
she's
cool
gonna be in
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah,
Like this was a showcase movie, you know.
I think
It
she
was
was
really
almost
good.
Awkwafina.
Yeah,
Oh really?
Yeah, at one point in casting.
I could see that, and I'm
Interesting.
glad that they didn't go that way, even though I love Awkwafina. I just liked seeing. I wish I knew her name. I used to know it.
Stephanie Chu.
Stephanie Chu. Yeah, I loved her performance. I thought that was amazing.
Incredible.
And I was also just like really blown away by how clever some of the stuff was, like how smart some of the decisions were. And even like the jokes that were so ridiculous, all of them were not exactly like, I guess they were smart, but like Ratatouille, whatever, stuff like that. It was just so silly. I loved it. I loved how things kept getting tied in, and it kind of felt like jokes that you would pitch as sort of like an off the wall thing, and then you'd be like, we can't do that. And then they said, actually, why can't we? Why not? Let's do it. Like the everything bagel has literally everything on it, that kind of stuff. I was like, wow.
It's 3 a.m. ideas, right?
Yeah.
Including
exactly.
poppy seeds and salt.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3 a.m. ideas. That's a good way to put it. But all woven together very, very well.
And all internally consistent too. Like in the hot dog universe, like when we're finally getting like so it's a universe where everybody has fingers that are hot dog size. That won the genetic competition, you know, and they do the 2001 Space Odyssey moment where
that's the director, by the way. That's one of the directors in the ape costume.
Oh, really? I knew that one of the other directors.
He's also the BDSM guy.
I was gonna say I knew that, but like details of like when we go into that universe like later on with this warm moment between Deidre's character, Deidre and Evelyn, when in a universe where they're actually dating. And in that universe, your feet evolve to compensate for the fact that you have hot dog fingers. And throughout the whole story, Deidre had a cast on her arm, but the cast is on her foot in the hot dog universe. Like it's like details like that that are like really.
I didn't even notice that.
Like when she's playing the piano, Claire de Lune with her feet. It's just like it's those sorts of decisions that were like really. It's kind of these callbacks, right? Mm-hmm. And also going. Oh yeah.
I was just pulling this up to have it here so people know what's up.
And like a detail. There are lots of details, right? And I feel like that's where the power in this movie comes from, right? Like the fact that her daughter keeps putting the googly eyes on everything inside of the laundromat. She's constantly taking them off. It's like, why are there googly eyes on this basketball? I'm going to get rid of it. And they recontextualize the googly eyes at the end as sort of an empowering show of her fighting with kindness, which is the character arc. But like the way the details will all sort of trickle back to the big themes. I thought they did a great job with that.
Definitely. I believe this is there we go. Some hot dog hands.
Those are great.
One of those posters had the Hebrew title, and I want to know what it says. It's the third one in that last. No, the second one in that last line.
This one?
Yeah. What does it say? It says Hakol Bekomakom Vivata. Yeah, it translates. It's everything in every place in one go, basically.
That's great.
I love that sometimes they're just not the same thing, and I love that.
The title. So in the movie, the title card, there is a Chinese title card that appears in the actual film, and that has a very specific meaning, which I think is a horse flies across the sky, which is a phrase that is culturally specific. That kind of means like when pigs fly, like it's just sort of this unlikely thing. But in different Chinese markets, it has different titles. And so in one of them, it's like something like "Strange Woman Gets into Trouble and Saves the World," and then in another one, it's a title that translates out as both Ma's multiverse and fucking multiverse.
Nice.
There's some wordplay going on, so it's yeah, titles are fun. I'm just glad that the Daniels found each other, Dan Kwan and Daniel Scheinert, because they clearly feed off each other's energy. Like the 3 a.m. ideas you were talking about, I feel like one of them will bring up an idea, and the next one will just yes and it to this ridiculous stratosphere, and they'll just kind of keep doing that until eventually they're like, we have to write this down.
But
wait, it's
I
two
also
more
think that
Dan?
that's balanced.
Sorry?
Yeah, they go by Daniels. They're both
Yeah,
named Daniel.
it's two directors. It's Dan
Oh my gosh! So
Kwan
there's Dan and Dan and Daniel and Daniel.
Well, no, it's
Like-
Dan and Daniel.
Okay.
And so they call themselves collectively Daniels.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But
Man.
one thing I appreciate about this is like, well, yeah, you have all that zany, you know, Rick and Morty, you know, free association, you know, sci-fi jokes, and you know, the comedic execution and silliness. You also have like a really grounded story. Like Daniel Kwan was said, like he wrote his parents into the movie, right? Like there's a huge personal connection that grounds everything, and it's a real story. And I think this movie could play a few different ways. Like really, it's about, you know, confronting nihilism, confronting what do you do when you realize that nothing matters, and how do you change that? Like, do you despair that, oh my God, nothing matters, and like every scientific discovery you make, there's a line Joy says, every scientific discovery we make just makes us feel like smaller pieces of shit. You know,
it's a very modern also form of nihilism too. It's
the
nihilism of we are barraged by so much information at any given moment all the time, and just a lot of just awfulness at all moments, and kind of an expectation to be present in everything everywhere. And amidst all that, there is kind of this growing nihilism of, you know, things are just going to shit. And it really does feel like they're using this movie to say, like, okay, there's a serious problem happening right now. We need to diagnose it, which is fascinating, just thematically.
I'm gonna get the link for the first script that we had. We don't have the final script that they shot with, as far as I know, but we do have an early draft in which Evelyn was Jackie Chan, which is just
not just they wanted Jackie Chan for the role. It was Jackie Chan, but in the universe where Jackie Chan was unremarkable. You can actually see the seeds of that idea here, in that, like, the whole line about her being a kung fu action star. Like, you can see those plot lines and a lot of those situations and jokes came from the first draft. Although Michelle Yeoh also had a Hong Kong career, so it works.
Oh yeah,
too. You know, I mean, you know, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. You know, nobody missed that.
No.
Yeah. Apparently, I'm looking at the Wikipedia right now because I read through a whole lot of interviews, and I'm not sure where I placed them, but on the Wikipedia, it does say that during pre-production they were thinking about Jackie Chan, and they just decided that they wanted it to be a husband and wife dynamic focusing on the woman. And when they renamed the character, they renamed her Michelle because they wanted Michelle Yeoh.
Yeah. And they said that they could either get Michelle or cast Daniel's mother. But if they did that, they'd only do it for a few $1 million, right? So I would like to see the universe in which the movie with the mom existed, right?
Yeah, and Michelle Yeoh said, like, it says here that Michelle Yeoh was the one who said, "You can't call my character Michelle." Like, they were gonna. And she's like, I want this person to be distinct from me.
Right.
So there was a moment where it was going to be, she was going to play Michelle Wang. And then they decided we need to come up with a name.
I think her instinct was right, though, because there's kind of a, well, maybe this wasn't her intention, but like there is a weird kind of meta, meaningless, like navel gazing like tone when you do stuff like that sometimes. And sometimes there's power in creating that level of separation. Like this is a character.
Yeah. Yesterday I saw The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which is
did you like it?
I enjoyed it a lot. It's Nicolas
Cage
it playing a fictionalized version of Nicolas Cage, and all of the marketing has been the fact that it's Cage as Cage, and it's all about his life and his trajectory and all that. And it's a really fun movie. I feel like if Everything Everywhere All at Once had been either Jackie Chan as Jackie Chan or Michelle Yeoh as Michelle Yeoh, it would have been about that. It would have been Nick Cage playing Nick Cage, and then we wouldn't really notice any of the other stuff. Like in the Nick Cage movie, there are some interesting thematic concepts that actually kind of exist apart from the fact that he is this recognizable mega actor. But nobody's talking about it. And here, the fact that we can actually talk about this movie and what it wants to be and what it's doing without being like, and here's where the character diverges from the real person. It's like, it was the right choice.
Mm-hmm. So this is the Jackie Chan script where we start with Professor Jackie facing off with Jobu and getting killed.
Which didn't happen in the movie.
And then we cut to, I think, the Jackie that we're gonna follow, who's the equivalent of the Evelyn, right? That we follow.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I just shared a link in the chat in case you all want to check it out, because a lot is the same, but with the obvious change of it not being Jackie Chan, and then some stuff rippling out from that. But yeah, it's really interesting.
What's funny is how little the script has actually changed. Like even like substituting in Evelyn, like certainly the specifics of the character stuff is different, but scene by scene, it's pretty close.
I wanted to talk a little bit about, so that we named this coffee class today. What did I say it was? It was very long. Here we go. Interweaving subplots to elevate drama. So basically just how are you using a B plot / C plot / D plot / all the different plots that they had to elevate the drama of the A plot? And Adam, I remember if we saw it, we talked about this for a moment where we were talking about how it wasn't just like at the winning moment or at the loss moment. It wasn't just that our present day Evelyn was losing. I can't even remember what she was losing, but I remember that Ratatouille was getting taken away in a truck. And that to me was devastating. Just like truly heartbreaking stuff. And how that moment built on the emotion of the A plot, because we had like a bunch of failures and all the different subplots hitting at once. And it really like heightened, I think, the emotions. It showed us like different versions of why you might feel the same way. And I think it hit really hard in a really cool way.
I mean, I have an opinion about this. I think functionally as a story, I don't really think there are many other plots outside of Evelyn's direct experience. It's just the concept of the movie gives the illusion of it, right? Like the fact that she can hop to any reality at any time in Act 3, because we have this effect in Act 3 where she's saving all the people we've seen through the story through kindness, whether it's like, I'm going to fix this guy's neck, to the hibachi chef who I've been going into that universe as a hibachi chef. I'm going to wreck his life and then save it by reuniting him with the Ratatouille, or like I think it's all of that stuff really happened in the last third of the movie. The first 2/3, all those same people were mostly either just, maybe it was just an image or a flash of like, oh, she's a hibachi chef now she has like knife skills. And he was in the background and he's the guy she's fighting. It's like emotionally from a story point of view, it's like all A plot until the end. That was my read anyway.
I feel like the subplots do have their own little baby arc. They're definitely not like full blown. I guess it depends, because I mean they
I
have
agree
a
with that.
plot, like they have the arc, but I guess you're differentiating that.
I think
from,
it
like,
all
the
happened in Act
subplot.
3 because there's so I think let's just go through the main act breaks real quick. This is just my read. Please
Yeah,
disagree.
go for it.
So our normal world, as we meet her, is she's in the laundry. She's dealing with her dad. She's the New Year's Eve party. Her normal world is she's oppressed by taxes. She can't connect with her daughter. She can't live up to her father's expectation. Her husband kind of wants to give her divorce papers, but is kind of nervous about it. All this terrible stuff. And it all culminates to, I'm really going fast, all culminates to them going to the IRS to file their taxes because they did them wrong. And I believe the inciting incident is in the elevator when Alphaverse Raymond first plugs her into the multiverse and gives her the instructions. Like that is the thing that disrupts the normal world. And I'm curious to hear what you guys think, because I think the Act 1 in this movie was very long to me, in the sense of I think that it actually ended when we met Jobu Tupaki. And her daughter, she realizes, oh my God, you're the reason my daughter's the way she is. And her objective at that point is, I'm going to stop Jobu Tupaki and save Joy. And I saw the midpoint as being the moment when she decides to go against the Alphaverse people's desire to kill Joy. And she says, I'm going to save her my own way. That was my read. And this all has a point in the sense of, I believe the end of Act 2 was when she overextended her mind and failed and became like Jobu Tupaki. That's the moment she dies, right? And then the movie ends with the end screen, and she sort of we go into all these different multiverse versions of herself, and she realizes that life is meaningless. And from that point on, there is a lot of her just jumping in between all the realities all at once. So I feel like from that point on, basically all of Act 3, which is really long to me, we get all those subplot effect. I just don't know if up to that point we were getting a lot of it. What do you guys think about that? Sorry, I just covered a lot of.
No,
I covered
great.
In very general terms. So
well, and I just asked in the comments. I asked other people to say what they think the inciting incident was too, because I'm curious about it, and I can see like different points. But go ahead, Avi.
Yeah, I mean, usually I feel like a subplot is something that is kind of happening tangentially to the main plot, right? It's like what your story is about if your story isn't about it. And so technically this does have all sorts of that, just with the added wrinkle that they're all happening simultaneously in different places, but kind of with the same person.
Everywhere all at once, you might say?
Everywhere, but like, I mean, like, there's something really unique to film that other mediums don't have, which is you string a bunch of disparate images together, and just by virtue of putting them next to each other and playing them, forward, it feels like they're all kind of one thing. So on one hand, you have all of these different stories, right, which kind of act independently. Like there is movie star Evelyn reconnecting with her, her ex-boyfriend from decades past, or there's Chef Evelyn who ruins Rakakuni's life and has to fix that and all of that. And in theory, somebody could edit this movie. There's a hot dog finger subplot where she's having some sort of lover spat with Deirdre Bobeirdre, which is a great name. In theory, somebody can go and edit this movie and just kind of strip those out and make them their own self-contained thing, and they work. But the thing that makes them feel like they're elevating the plot is, first of all, the fact that they're happening simultaneously with each other and with the main plot, and that there is a main plot, right? Like we know which one is central, the one we're supposed to care about more than any other, and that's the one that's kind of benefiting from the knowledge of the other ones. But also the fact that, right, like the whole concept of script structure is there are certain kinds of things happen at certain points that have maximum emotional impact. And so you have typically a sort of an all is lost moment or an epiphany and whatnot. And if you have a bunch of stories that all kind of have that, and just kind of have those beats happen all together at the same time each time, it kind of amplifies the whole thing, right? Like if she's at her lowest point across multiple stories, and we're bouncing between them, and we're not kind of like telling each story sequentially. We're just bouncing between them and kind of having them play out pretty much simultaneously. It does kind of amplify the feeling, right? And the fact that it is technically the same person, but without having to, without her in one subplot having to think about what's going on in the other. Like the Rakakuni version of her doesn't have to think about the bagel, right? So that's kind of a unique thing to this movie that I don't think you really see in other movies. Because usually if you did that in another movie where it is technically in one timeline and there's a character who has to deal with their goal and their obstacles, but off on the side they have to deal with their child has homework that needs work, that person will also be preoccupied with the main goal too while doing that. This gets away with avoiding that, and I don't know if many movies can do that, but it's worth exploring just as a thing that only a movie can do. Like, you can't really do it with any other form of media. Who is that?
That is my dog.
That? I was ranting
my dog,
about
Lulu.
media, and I want.
She did not like it. She said, "Avi, no, I object," is what she told me.
Lulu thought I was being pretentious.
That's what she said. I didn't say it.
No, I thought it was agreement. She was saying like, yeah, what he said.
Tell him, Avi. Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good point. I guess I remember, Adam, when we left the theater and then immediately started breaking the film because it's inevitable. I remember that at first, I know, right? Inevitable. We were just like walking to dinner and they're like, so where was the inciting incident?
I can't believe you would see it.
I really think it's the elevator scene, right? It has to be.
I think so too. But this is a good point. Is it when Data kicks ass with the fanny pack? Because that's kind of the moment that she accepts the alternate universe.
The whole thing is that the inciting incident is like the big, like it's not that he shows up in the elevator. It's that he plugs her into the multiverse and she experiences all of her she experiences like a bunch of, she experiences her moment of birth to how she got to where she is now. And we see all of that and she's completely discombobulated. He says, here, you got to follow these instructions. Like that's like as disruptive as possible, being plugged into the multiverse and told instructions that you're probably may or may not follow. I don't know.
I think it's the fanny pack, and I think it's the fanny pack. Yeah, because I think it's true that Alpha Waymond shows up and starts giving her all of these, these roles and these powers, and she's like doing all that, but she's not really engaged or part of that quite yet, right? Like she's just trying to do what she's already been doing. Because Act 1, before the inciting incident, is just about her trying to get her taxes stuff dealt with, and I think she's still trying to get her taxes stuff dealt with up until the moment that she physically can't, which is when Waymond starts the fight and suddenly the entire conflict has begun, right? That's the moment where, Jobu becomes aware of her, really. Like, that's the moment where Deirdre becomes an antagonist and the guards show up and suddenly we're trapped in the IRS building. Like, I think that until that point, she is resisting the inciting incident, and she can no longer resist it at that point.
It's the hero's journey classic thing of when the inciting incident happens, the hero doesn't respond to it. They reject the call. Right?
But I think she still rejects it after that point, right? Like she spends a lot of it trying to run away from it, but at that point, the story has kickstarted. I think until that, it's all runway to start it off.
Yeah, it's like that's why I think it's interesting, because I could see it being that the guy in the elevator turning on her brain to this other universe, it does start the moment like where she can never take that information back, right? Like that is sort of like my life has changed, and then immediately she does refuse the call. She's like, no, I don't like this. I'm not going to do it. And all very funny about how that's handled. But like she's completely rejecting it. So I would call that resisting the call. And then when the fanny pack thing happens, she is tied in now. Like she can't ignore it. And so I think that that's one way to look at it. And then I guess that would make her discovering that her daughter is the bad guy sort of a midpoint. But I can also see the argument that the inciting incident is the elevator, that she's resisting the call all the way up to the point that she finds out that her daughter is the bad guy. And that's, I think, what Adam is referring to when he's talking about a long act one. Because I think
that's how I read it. Doesn't mean it's
up until that point. Because up until that point, I don't think that she had the objective. Like, I don't think she really. That's kind of where I guess
she was reactive. She was just trying to get out of the building.
I do think meeting Jobu is the end of Act 1. I just kind of feel like it's like an old computer where, when the elevator scene happens, the computer is starting to boot up, and it finally kind of finishes booting up when the fanny pack thing is. I just think that there's so much that they need to set up for us to understand even that something is happening, that they just have to give themselves so much rope before they finally get to the point of, and now we can start playing. And I feel like that's what they're doing. It's just they're giving themselves rope to get to that point.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. But also I know that like structure is a fuzzy thing that we kind of impose retroactively on stories that already exist.
It's descriptive of stories. It's kind of semantics at a certain point. Be like, we both agree that the fanny pack was like a big emotional moment, and that the elevator is an emotional moment. Like, it's kind of like, well, which is the inciting incident? Doesn't fucking matter. The thing works, right?
It is
By the way,
to think about though, because I think that like when I'm writing a sci-fi movie that has a lot of world building like this, which is a genre that I'm particularly interested in, it's useful to think about, okay, what was the inciting incident? Like, how long did they give themselves? Why did that much world building? If we assume Act 1 is that long, why did they get away with it? Why were we okay with her being somewhat, I guess, reactive rather than active up until that point? It's questions like that I think makes it worth it to get into it.
Oh, totally. And I think it works in this case because there's never a moment where she isn't facing conflict or pressure, or she doesn't have a goal, right? Like you want to tell a movie about a woman with a struggling laundromat whose daughter is disaffected from her and has depression, and whose husband is withdrawing, and all she wants to do is just get this taxes thing figured out, but the tax person is hostile. Like, even before you start throwing weird sci-fi nonsense at us, like, that works. And one of the things that the co-writers / directors talked about is how they felt like this is a movie that just contains a lot of different movies, which sometimes creates conflict, right? Like that scene where in the IRS building before the fanny pack sequence, when she holds up the page with the instructions on what she's supposed to do for Waymond and asks, what's this all about? But he sees the side that's the divorce papers. So for her, it's a sci-fi action movie, and for him, it's this indie drama about a marriage falling apart, and they're both compelling. And so no matter what, we're always being drawn by something happening. It's just that it hasn't revealed its main intentions just yet. We feel like we're getting a sense of its intentions, but it has bigger intentions than that.
I'm enjoying these pictures.
He is so good, by the way, and I'm so sad that he had to take such a long hiatus from acting from when he was younger. But he does the Clark Kent to Superman thing better than like anybody since since Chris Reeves. It's wild. The switch.
Yeah, it is pretty great.
And Michelle Yeoh was talking about this in an interview. She says that he had an acting coach on set because he felt kind of creaky, and the acting coach told him that each of his characters is a different animal. So like normal husband Waymond is a squirrel, and Alpha Waymond is an eagle, and I think like billionaire mogul Waymond from the Wong Kar-wai universe is a fox, I think. And so he was just sort of trying to embody these animals, and she said that he would do these like sort of exercises where he was being kind of squirrely or he was being kind of eagerly, and you can kind of tell when he has a switch from squirrel to eagle in a split second. It's really kind of incredible to see that happen.
It's really
like
cool.
Watching an athlete or something. It's like, whoa, how do you do that?
Fun fact, by the way, that one scene early on where she's in the van with him, and they're talking about the divorce, but it's happening kind of concurrently with the Deirdre thing. So every so often, like a door will get like ripped off the van, or but it's mostly just the two of them talking. That was the last scene that they filmed, and it was the only scene that they had to do during lockdown because they had filmed everything else. So she's in one part of the country, he's in another part of the country. They're being composited together into the van. They were not there with each other to film that. And then the Deirdre hand that attacks the window and grabs her and pulls her out is one of the director's hands. It's such an indie movie. They're just doing their thing and
doing their very best.
stitching together all of this sort of like, it's twine and gum holding this movie together, which is incredible.
Yeah.
It's an achievement. Cool. And it's hard to do an indie kung fu movie. That like
the choreographers never actually studied kung fu. They just learned it from watching movies, and they became famous as YouTube kung fu people because they just watched a lot of Hong Kong movies.
Wow.
This is the fox. That's a little. Yeah. I don't know how I feel about all that.
It's such a spin and twine movie. It's ridiculous.
That's so funny. I just love all of these. They're so great. Oh, yeah. Jobu's costumes. I want
to really talk about here, just because I think the one thing the movie for me did like so well was Act 3 and the sort of inner need, flaw, thematic transformation thing, the connection between the three family members and the way they all sort of achieve catharsis together. Like that was so powerful. And that sequence of the last 30 minutes of the movie, we're just getting emotional payoff after emotional payoff after emotional payoff. Like, I actually had trouble trying to write down what her flaw was because there was so much in the idea. They explore so much of like what it means to like live a meaningful life, what it means to not be able to connect with somebody. And like they go a lot of places with this movie. Like I don't think you can. I mean, you could do the whole thing as like she's not.
Yeah.
What?
I think it has to do with the daughter.
Well, right, but the whole there's the shallow one version that's very easy because you think you can read that Raymond is her mentor. Waymond is her mentor because after the all is lost moment, he literally has a speech about we stop everybody. We have to start like a fight with kindness because that's the only way I know how to fight.
In every incarnation.
Yeah, in every incarnation, right? But like he has that speech, and so if you go by the theory that okay, the mentor has the inner need, the protagonist needs, and she like literally starts saying, "I'm learning to fight your way," it's like very heavy-handed in that respect. So you could say that she has to learn to, fight. I think fight's the wrong word, but like realize that kindness is and the small moments you have with people are the reason why you would live in a world where nothing matters. What do you guys think about that?
Well, it's their antidote to modern life, right? Like when things are so divisive and painful for everybody everywhere right now, it's so easy to just kind of give in to we got to just sort of destroy enemy, and this movie is trying to make the point of in that kind of situation, kindness is a radical form of conflict that actually has results. By the way, like you both know, I'm sure. I don't know if necessarily our audience does, but you know about the Kuleshov effect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like for anybody watching it, Kuleshov effect is an editing experiment from the early last century, where an image of a man's face with no expression was intercut with various different items, and depending on what we're cutting to, people read into his emotion. So flat face and then bowl of soup. Oh, look how hungry he is. Flat face, small child running around a room. Like, oh, he loves his daughter. And this, that's just sort of the power of what editing does, right? Just two images next to each other create a new image just by virtue of that. And what this climax does is it intercuts so many different things with so much intention, but so little connectivity, that you just kind of get the feeling that they're going for in this really complex, sometimes difficult to describe, but very palpable and very emotional way, where you do feel the closure that every character is getting, just by virtue of how it's intercutting with what seems to be unrelated to it, how the music plays, you know. Um, it's there was this little tweet exchange between one of the Daniels and Kogonada, who was a video essayist who became a filmmaker and makes these lovely subtle dramas like Columbus and After Yang. And Kogonada had said like this movie has some wonderful nuance, and I think it was Daniel Kwan responded like that's so gratifying because people mistake nuance for subtlety, but nuance isn't subtlety, right? Like this is a maximalist movie. This is a movie where you're throwing everything at the screen in the loudest way possible, but nuance is the way that you have the sound change, right? Like nuance is a new noise. It's difference. It's it's gradation. And you can have gradation in the most over the top way possible. What this movie does is in its third act especially, it throws everything at your face at 500 miles an hour, but it's varied in very intentional ways because they're always in control of what they're trying to get you to feel. And that's hard to do even when you're not moving at 500 miles per hour, you know? That's hard to do when it's just two people in a room chatting. How do you have that variation where you're constantly engaged and you're constantly feeling new things and you feel like this is moving towards something, right? It's a magic trick.
Makes sense. I would agree.
I really like that. No, that does. Nuance and subtlety are confused all the time. And I think that is levied against maximalist aesthetic in general. Like critics of it are really like, oh, it's too there's nothing to it,
yeah. I think you can be nuanced. You can be nuanced with a chainsaw. Was it a chainsaw or was it a jackhammer? It's one of those. But it's such a.
I love that.
And by the way, just side note. Apparently, as they were writing the script, and they originally were considering giving Evelyn undiagnosed ADHD. While they were writing it, one of the Daniels learned that he himself had undiagnosed ADHD, and realized, oh, this makes so much sense.
One thing I liked was that she didn't let the dad off at the end. That she said, "Oh, Lexi left." Well, that she basically they're powerful. There's the lesser version of this movie would have like had her forgive her father for being like, it's okay, yada yada yada. But she said like, no, I'm not going to do to my daughter what you did to me. Like I really liked that. That was a nice moment.
It's really smart, and like. It doesn't let him off the hook, but it does force him to change, right? Like there is that moment where he accepts Joy's girlfriend. One thing that I loved is that they don't let Evelyn off the hook, right? Like Evelyn has her massive epiphany, her almost Zen master epiphany in that third act with the eyeballs everywhere and fighting with kindness and and then in that one reality where there's in the laundromat she's saying this is my daughter and this is her girlfriend. It's like this big moment, and then Joy's like, okay, so you dealt with your shit, but that doesn't excuse, that doesn't, like, you think you just fixed everything with a big moment. And that's something that I think about all the time when we look at movies and writing, because movies are so designed for that moment of redemption. And it's always a moment of redemption. It's always, there's one thing you have to do that fixes everything. And, in a simple narrative kind of way, often that works. But this movie kind of says, like, actually, like, it does take work and it's messy and you can't just fix things with the right line. So Evelyn has to then push back against her daughter, pushing back against her, thinking that she's kind of redeemed herself that way. And I will say that was kind of a part of the movie where I was starting to feel its length, just because structurally we're so kind of used to like, you just did the thing, now get out of there. But instead they kind of did a push and pull. And at the moment I did kind of feel like, I wonder if maybe this is a deficit to the movie, but in retrospect, like philosophically, I think that was really smart of them because, you don't just achieve enlightenment, you actually have to do work after that.
Yeah, and I mean it's because it was clearly very heavily about generational trauma, and
Oh yeah.
it's such a topic that I think it was an important choice not to. I think that leaving it without that would have been very detrimental to the movie. I'm not necessarily saying that the way it was handled is the best way ever. I think it was well done, but I think that it would have been wrong to just have her be better and then everybody move on. Sort of like in those movies where the workaholic learns the true meaning of Christmas and comes back home in time to spend Christmas with his family. And it's like, and everyone's just like, Daddy, yay. And it's like, okay, well, that does not excuse any of the stuff that happened before. It's not just magically fixed now. And so that's a good point that I hadn't really thought about too much. I think that I like that I feel like modern movies are getting deeper into the fact that stuff doesn't get fixed all at once. Like I've noticed that in more like
anywhere
TV
or anything
anywhere all at once.
Speaking of things getting fixed magically, I haven't figured out mechanically how they got to this moment, but like, okay, they trashed the IRS. Like police warrants are out for them. She stabbed Waymond, and he's like bleeding there with a piece of glass in him. Like they're wanted. And then everything's magically okay. Did they just ditch that universe to go to like a universe that's like one over that wasn't fucked up?
I guess, do we care?
I don't care, but I just was wondering. The second time I watched it, I was like, wait a second. So the multiverse thing, it's not time travel. It's not right. Like they did those things.
Yeah,
it's true, but I guess the fact that she exists in all the continuums means that it all happened and also none of it happened. So
right. So it doesn't matter is the answer.
Maybe she. I mean, we also know that she can magically change things after a certain point. Maybe
that's
but I just want to get back to one last thing about the redemption thing. It is a thing that we preach specifically with overcoming flaw is the thing that's holding you back. You do that, you have that change, you make the choice that proves you have changed, and that's the thing that kind of triggers resolution. And it's worthwhile for our viewers to kind of just take into account of, you can play with that. It's not, you don't have to magically magic it all together. You can have somebody achieve their overcome their flaw and be a better person, even if it doesn't actually fix anything. And if anything, that might actually be a stronger, more impactful message of, hey, it is worthwhile to become better, even if you are not fixing everything in the process. But just sort of a thought to throw in there.
Yeah, but we're so conditioned to want things to get fixed, and be clean, especially American audiences. It's if the world isn't saved, or somebody's world isn't, if the situation isn't fixed, if you're ending on a note of, but what they didn't really matter and it didn't really make a difference, it bugs people.
Yeah, we at least need as an audience, we at least need the idea that it could, that it's on a track that's positive.
I'm not saying that that's good. I just say
no, for sure. I was just saying that, like with in this one, we didn't necessarily get like magic, everything better moment between mom and daughter, but we got, okay, there's at least, they're on track to maybe have something better now. And that is kind of enough for us. But it would be interesting to see a movie where they're just a better person in the end. And I don't know. I guess it might be kind of dismal. I feel like I want something.
Well, this gives a lot, right? Like, even with the trickiness of, it's going to take some time, we do get treated to, she pulls Jobu out of the bagel, they do. they do repair, like the marriage is repaired, and they are working with Deirdre again. Like there's a lot of resolution. It's just that they make the point of it's not snap of the finger, you know. Which
Oh yeah, I was more meaning like an imaginary movie where they resolve their flaw, but it doesn't fix anything at all. Like, and it's sort of like about that it might be worth it anyway. And I think that could be interesting. I think though that I would want them to lean into like the personal satisfaction of like at least they're glad that they did it. Right. Otherwise, it's just tragic.
Right.
Tragedy's valid.
Yeah. You don't want it to be nihilistic. You don't want it to be, unless you do. But in generally, I guess you don't want it to be like nothing has changed. I have achieved nothing, but at least I now know not to be a homophobe, right? Like you do want.
Well, no, that's television. That's
yeah.
TV, right?
Yeah, it's just that what you don't necessarily need, that I think some people think they need, is there. You know, I guess in the sense of there's one thing I gotta do, and then everything is instantly fixed, and then we're done. You know, like there's a key. If only you turn the right key, you've unlocked the whole thing. And you can do a story where there's still a mountain to climb, but you've actually started the trip up, and that's valid.
Here's interesting. Have you all seen Don't Look Up?
I actually haven't. I know how it ends, but I have not seen it.
Otherwise, it was spoiled for you.
Oh.
But yeah, no, I saw it.
I thought that was kind of a given.
No. People, that was audience. A lot of audiences didn't like it for some reason.
Really?
I personally didn't. I'll admit, I actually couldn't make it through the whole movie.
Oh no!
I know. I turned it off halfway through, but it was also the people I was watching it with were like not into it. So
that'll do it. Yeah, if you're watching with people into it, it's much more fun. Yeah, I think it gets about like we still want some sort of emotional resolution, but it doesn't need to be clean, I think.
Yeah.
But it can be clean. Like a lot of really traditionally, it will be clean. And it's important to kind of note that it is a little bit like non-traditional storytelling to have it not be so clean, but I don't think that means it's bad. I just think it means it's something that's kind of like that we're still working on. Like it's newer, I think. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm lying. But
I think it does depend. I think tragedy is inherently about failure, right? So it depends on so Don't Look Up is a tragedy. Actually, Adam McKay's other film, The Big Short, also ends and the big banks bailed it out and they got away with it because they knew the governments would bail them out and it didn't fucking matter. Some people made some money out of the corruption. The world is fucked. That's how it ends, right? Like it's very much a tragedy about like Wall Street. It's also a true story, but
have you seen The Nice Guys?
Oh, is that the one with Mark Wahlberg and?
No, it was.
Oh no, that's the other guy.
Yeah, it's Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling. It's the Shane Black movie. Spoiler: they don't really resolve the. Like they don't necessarily win at the end. The bad guys don't necessarily get taken to justice, but they achieve a lot and they overcome a lot of their own personal demons and they become friends, and it's such an uplifting movie. It's like, yes, it's incredibly cynical, but also it's like such a joy. There are ways to play with it. Remember, you just have to remember what we care about, right? Because like when we're watching, we don't necessarily need full resolution, but what we care about is that the characters are have overcome some sort of turmoil, that they understand something better about themselves, that their relationships are in a different place. And I feel like on one hand, if you avoid giving that resolution altogether, that feels like such, that's incredibly frustrating. But I also feel like if you give it too neatly and too quickly, it could also feel disingenuous, and then we also kind of don't care as much. So, it's something to think about, of like giving us what we want in a way that we need it, as opposed to just kind of giving it to us and saying, "Yay, the end! They all lived happily ever after." It's because what you don't want to do is make your audience feel patronized, right? Okay, this wouldn't work out this way, but you know that's what I wanted, so you gave it to me. Yay, the end. Good night. People want to feel like it's been earned.
It's also like a lot of them. I think it's exactly that. It's like characters getting what they want and what they need. Usually is a little sickly sweet for people, like.
This movie is so pretty.
Oh, it's so well done. It's so well done. It's amazing.
Looking at this image.
It's amazing that it was done for $25 million. Like, that's absolutely
that's wild.
Which is huge for A24, by the way. Like, that is a massive budget for A24.
Yeah, it's amazing how much better their movies on average look compared to the average, not to knock Marvel, but, the average Marvel movie doesn't look that good, like, memorable. I don't know.
Well, I feel like there's a different way that these things are shot, right? Like with Marvel, every shot is storyboarded and animatic in advance, and there's a lot of kind of studio lighting where everything is lit to be as kind of clean as possible, and you can see everything, and easy to composite effects. And whereas this, when I was watching, I'm like, this has to have been heavily storyboarded, right, for the editing to work. Apparently not. Apparently they made up a lot of their visual plan on the day. There isn't much visual consistency throughout the movie, obviously, because we're bouncing between different universes and they don't really have the same, the same looks. And then they got their friends to make 600 visual effects shots that a lot of them are honestly just jump cuts, right? Like, a lot of them are just, throwing the same punch in two different shots and cutting in the middle. Which,
like, there aren't that many CGI elements at all, other than the bagel.
600 effects shots in the whole movie. That's for a movie like this, out of this length, also, that's minuscule. So it's that I think gives it its own feeling, in the sense of they really did a lot in camera, a lot in just jump cuts, really basic editing stuff, and it's just using the medium, instead of what a Marvel movie would do, which is valid in its own way, but which is, we go through the visual effects pipeline, and every effect is kind of handled by in-house by this by the visual effects artists, and a lot of elements are replaced with CGI to make sure that they kind of blend better. And I know that the Daniels turned down an offer to direct Loki. They were asked to do the first season of Loki, and they turned it down and did this instead. And if they had done Loki, I don't think it would have felt like this. Visually, stylistically.
Also, I think they have rules, right? Like, Marvel stuff. It's like, this feels like it was all like a lot of practical effects, like a lot of practical choices that were done, that were physically done, like a lot of it's costume and things like that. And then with Marvel, I mean, they're in a green warehouse with a dotted suit, right? And that's kind of the deal. And then half the time it's not them, because they're doing special effects, 3D stuff. So yeah, I guess that's part of it, is that I really like that a lot of it was practical effects. Like, I assume that's really what her hair looked like in that scene, that they gave her a bagel on her head and that she ran around. But if it's like Marvel, I think that you mostly get your hats and later.
The fact that Jobu's costume is just a whole bunch of different random attire that changes in a cut depending on the angle we're looking at, or what step on the staircase she falls on. That sometimes she looks like a ninja, and sometimes she looks like a clown, and sometimes she looks like she's at a wedding, sometimes she looks like a little old woman. And it's but it's so distinctive despite having no distinction. It's whereas, I think if it were done in Marvel, and not a knock on Marvel at all, they have their costume designers who have a very specific internal look. And you notice that a lot of the wardrobe in Marvel kind of follows the same organizing principle of, you kind of have the dividing pipes around the shoulders, and you kind of have the very specific way that the body armor is segmented. And, whereas here, I mean, look at that. She kills somebody by turning him into confetti. She turns somebody else into like a dancer and drops him on his head. Um, she gets shot, but it's ketchup. Like that's every one of those isn't just an idea; it's a visual. You know, it's a thing they actually had to build.
Pretty cool.
Interesting that Loki is also a multiverse project.
Yeah.
So they had to choose: do we do our baby, or do we do one for the machine and make a bunch of money?
Yeah. And again, not to knock Marvel. I mean, like Benson
Not
and
to knock
Moorhead.
Marvel.
Benson and Moorhead are these really distinctive indie filmmakers who make these really great, low budget, very personal, weird sci-fi horror movies that are very grounded in relationship every time and very, you know, people. It's very dialogue driven and very human. They all have a very distinct feel amongst each other. They all kind of feel like they belong to these directors. They just directed a bunch of Moon Knight, and now they're going to direct the next season of Loki. And I watched their episodes of Moon Knight, and I'm like, I don't really see Benson and Moorhead in this, but it works, you know, and I'm glad it makes them happy. And I was reading an interview with them, and they said that what they're doing is when they do these TV shows, they're working in these crews that have a very specific set of rules and a very specific set of tools and a pipeline that they're kind of plugged into. And while they're doing all that work within that context, they are learning tricks of how to shoot things, how to light things, how to play things that they can then steal for their own stuff down the line. So it's almost like school where everything's really formalistic and there's a right and a wrong way to do it. But you take stuff away from that and then you bring it into your own work. So it all just depends on what you're going for. But these, you know, the Daniels, I feel like don't plug in. You know, I feel like they just riff.
Yeah. I think that the Marvel stuff, like, it makes sense for a big universe like that to want to have standardized, like a standardized look. Like, say that, like, if this is how the armor works in this universe, then it's all going to be somewhat similar to this armor because this is what works here. And I think that, so in that sense, I think that Marvel stuff benefits from at least some or a lot of the standardization. Not that I don't think that you couldn't like play with it more, but I think they did. I always confuse Marvel and DC, but like, which one's Jessica Jones?
Marvel.
That's also Marvel.
Marvel.
That's Netflix, yeah.
And that I like that TV show a lot, and that didn't quite. I mean, maybe I'm completely just full
That's
of it.
because
But
there's a reason for that. The Netflix produced Marvel shows had a lot of their own identity and weren't quite in that pipeline. But then Disney pulled the plug on it all. So
they were run by a different division that had a different creative head. So
love that.
They did kind of like the Netflix shows. I felt kind of blended into each other a little bit, but they didn't blend into the other Marvel stuff. Rather,
wasn't part of like the cinematic universe, right?
Spencer says, and then you see clips from Doctor Strange 2, and there's a lot of Sam Raimi flourishes, so it's not always completely consistent.
We'll see. I mean, I'll be like, on one hand there are the flourishes, on the other hand it looks very of a piece with what they've been doing. We'll see how it plays, but I do think that
in general, like, I was gonna say, I think, you know, for big Marvel stuff, if you are someone who knows what Sam Raimi stuff looks like, you might, like, if you're kind of like in the know, you might be able to pick up on these things. In general, to the average moviegoer, is going to seem super formulaic and probably the same.
I mean, it's a machine, and the question is, can you, how good are you at using that machine, right? Like Sam Raimi has, it's not just his own style, but he has a very certain type of inventive mind. So you plug him into this way of working with previs and with a whole lot of reshoots and, you know, a whole lot of kind of digital elements that require a certain kind of lighting to really kind of blend them in. And then with that, he might say, what if we flip the camera 180 degrees? You know, what if we put it on this kind of rig that moves in this certain direction? And to the degree that it blends, I mean, we'll see how it actually plays, but I suspect that the average person who watches that will probably say this felt like another Marvel movie, and I liked it. You know, where like which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but like I do know that the next movie that Sam Raimi does that isn't Inside the Machine will probably not feel like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to say that it's not like to anyone's moral detriment the fact that the Disney's prime directive is to make its shareholders happy, and delivering consistently a consistent product that makes billions of dollars, like you're not going to fuck that up, right? Like you're not going to reinvent the pipeline if it's been working for the last 10 years.
Hallmark. It's Hallmark again. I mean, Hallmark has all those like
they have
really wild formula that's like, it's a 9-act. I think that's what it is. It's a 9-act.
That's a lot more like, I think, prescriptive than I think the Marvel approach, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying that this happens in a lot of
no gays,
places.
no Jews.
No,
yeah.
I think that they're allowing more stuff now. So
and Disney will never ever make any gay plot line part of a major that you can't edit out for China.
Yeah.
They design their movies that way.
Well, except for, say, The Eternals, right? Which I guess wasn't going to play in China to begin with.
Well, right. Like this movie is never going to play in China, ever.
Right. Spencer Malcolm in the comments makes an interesting point about James Gunn and Chloe Zhao, because like I think those are good examples of James Gunn has a very specific style that on one hand you recognize, and on the other hand in Marvel it still fits the general tone. And Chloe Zhao, did this thing with Eternals where it's very naturalistically lit and tries to use all natural lighting and not trying to have that same sort of glossy feel. And you really feel the friction in that between her very specific indie sensibilities and the way Marvel works, that I think the movie doesn't really work in the end because of that friction. But it's also a fascinating thing to kind of see in that movie because they just don't click, Anyway, we've been talking about Marvel for a while. What about Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yeah, I don't think Marvel gets enough, discourse.
Yeah. This creature has been nipping at my heels.
Is it hungry?
Oh no!
It must feed.
It must feed.
Heard the Lulu.
How often do you refer to your dog as an it?
Never.
Never? Yeah, I was about to say you seemed very uncomfortable with that.
Don't mind me. Keep talking.
So should we now think about, I guess, because we're getting close on time, what is your one screenwriting takeaway from Everything Everywhere All at Once that you learned or that you would apply to your own scripts?
Adam, you go first.
Have fun with your idea and be free to try things. That was my big takeaway about this, is they had so much fun generating ideas for the story and really went outside of the box and found creative solutions to things and made associations on a deep level that were tied to the idea of a multiverse, right? But I don't know, they went someplace fresh and interesting and surprising. They had joy and fun. That's a very generic thing, but I think it's forgotten a lot of the time. People get very much in their tunnel vision sometimes. I don't know.
So kind of complementary to that, I would say you can do anything that you want in your story, any insane concepts, any wild, over the top, incongruous things, if you don't lose track of what your story is actually about. Because I've read plenty of scripts that are full of imagination and doing everything under the sun you can possibly do, but I lost interest because there wasn't a through line. And this movie is about an immigrant woman, her father, her daughter, her husband, the interpersonal conflicts that she has with them. She's trying to keep her laundromat afloat. Her daughter is disaffected. Her husband feels marginalized. Our main character just feels overwhelmed. She's trying to deal with her taxes. And she realizes that she won't be able to bring any kind of balance to her life unless she pulls her daughter out of her depressive nihilism and, really try to find a connection that's falling apart, and realizing that they're kind of on the precipice of they're no longer really connecting as a family. And the only way to kind of move forward is to find that connection. But she has a hard time with that because she doesn't have that relationship to begin with. And so she has to look inward. And by the end of the story, she has found a way to connect with her daughter and reconcile with her father, and realize what she hadn't seen all this time in her husband, that the thing that she thought was his biggest flaw was his biggest strength, and that's what she really loves about him. And they connect with the IRS woman who was hostile to them because they realize that she has problems too, and they deal with it. That is what the story is about. It is not about hot dog fingers. It is not about rakakuni. It is not about slicing your fingers open so that you can jump to a world where you know kung fu, or it's not about bagels. It's not about any of that. That's fun. That's a fun way to dress up the movie. That's the outfit. But what is the movie actually? So when you write your maximalist story, just remember what the story is.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Alexie.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of it was, we talk about this sometimes, but like how if you want to play with format, like if you want to do something kind of like unique in the way that you're telling the story, like how they do here with the different subplots jumping in, just the power of doing that at the beginning and like having it consistent throughout, so that it feels of the same piece, and like we establish the rules of what this seems like fairly early, and then you can play with it later on. Just kind of remembering that works, because sometimes when you do it, it feels like, I don't know. To me, it always feels like weird when I start trying to do something a little bit different than the norm. Like if I was trying to write this, I would be like, how do I establish that I'm going to be cutting around and stuff? And it's like, well, the audience will go along for the ride if you start early with these different worlds and stuff. And so that's part of what I take away. And then also just like the power of mini objectives, like mini, with like in a scene, having what does the character want in this scene as something to keep the everything moving forward. Like, you have the different fight scenes, like where we know they need to get out, or we know they need to do this, and just making sure that there's.
I was just about to say the trophy, the Auditor of the Year trophy.
That too, I guess.
That was a great scene.
Yeah, But yeah, just kind of remembering like to have like little mini objectives that are clear. And I think that, they really highlighted that by doing things like that, like where they say, okay, now in order to access this thing, you need to do this. And it really helps to move the plot forward, to know what we're targeting and why, and how it's getting us closer to the final goal. Yeah. That's it.
I want to add also, kind of just piggybacking on your previous thought, try to get a sense of what your reader expects, and if you know what they're expecting, then you can control the new information you give them that goes against that. Like, it's a piece of advice I keep coming back to from one of my mentors is show and tell. Sometimes you actually have to kind of clarify things because, it might go over their heads to the point of detriment to, what you're trying to get across. So sometimes you actually have to have Wayman explain, you need to do something unusual. And if you do that, that's what connects you to this reality over here. And you have a little picture showing what that means. And it's like, okay, I get it now, whereas until that point, you're like, what? So know what the expectations are, know what the questions are, and then lean into what questions the reader is asking, and you can give the answers if you know what they're asking.
The only rule is to not be boring, right? You can tell in a way that's not boring. It's all good, right?
Yeah, but don't confuse.
That easy.
Yeah, but don't confuse non-boring with loud, right?
Right,
The reason this movie isn't boring is because of the story beneath it, and because of the clever choices being made. It's not just the fact that they're throwing as much chaos at you as possible. And I think new writers don't necessarily make that distinction.
And I'm just brought up of the scene where they're under the table in the conference room with the snacks above, and she says, no, enough of your shit. Explain it to me right now. How much worse would that scene have been if he didn't just explain that dairy didn't exist in his universe, and he just sort of downed that half and half, right? Like,
yeah. Cream cheese.
Yeah.
I keep thinking about that sequence.
Yeah.
Specificity. Like, And this goes to, even if you're not doing the over the top Mad Max version of your movie, if you're just doing a little drama, what people say and do, there's universality in specificity. So go specific, and we're going to remember details if you give us details. Don't just kind of have the vague universal version of your sequences.
So next week,
oh, yeah.
we are doing the Screenwriters portfolio. What do you need? So kind of talking about, like, you know, sample scripts, like depending on what you want to do. Should you go into a pitch with other pitches? How many pitches? What kind of stuff should be in that portfolio of yours?
We should also talk about meetings a little bit.
That's great.
Yeah, that too. So that is next week, and I'm very excited. And let us know if there's something that you want us to talk about, because we are always open. I know we're going to eventually do Coda, which I'm excited about.
We're going to do it when it's totally irrelevant and everybody's forgotten it's existed.
What are you talking about? It's going to stand the test of time forever.
There we go. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.